carrying their babies in their arms, clinging to what few belongings they could carry. These are hundreds of refugees in Turkey travelling towards the country's borders with Greece and Bulgaria. Among them, Syrians, Iranians, Afghans and Algerians. The quasi-exodus comes after Ankara's decision to no longer impede their passage to Europe.
I heard the news and that's why I came. I want to go to Europe.
How long have you been travelling for?
2.5 hours.
We've been living in Istanbul. We want to go to Edirne and from there to Greece.
The move to open up its borders is Ankara's response to a deadly strike by Syrian government forces the previous day. And it could unleash a repeat of the migration crisis of 2015-2016, when more than 1 million people arrived by sea in Greece and crossed the Balkans on foot. That's before Turkey shut its frontier in an agreement with the EU in exchange for €6 billion. Greece, meanwhile, has bolstered its border security, although some migrants have already arrived by rubber dinghies. Now, this offensive on Turkish forces marks an escalation in the ongoing conflict between Turkish and Russian-backed Syrian troops. These tit-for-tat attacks started in early February. However, according to the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan agreed during a phone call on Friday on the need for new measures to be put in place to ease tensions. This ahead of an emergency meeting by NATO envoys who called for de-escalation.
Well, let's get more now and cross to Brussels, where we can speak to France 24's Dave Keating. Dave, quite a lot happening in Brussels today. I just want to start by asking you what EU members make of that threat by Turkey to flood Europe with refugees.
Yeah, there seems to be some real confusion about that because we had a senior official in Turkey saying that they were going to open the borders to the EU, which would violate the terms of that agreement. But then we've just been briefed here at the European Commission headquarters that they, in fact, have received no such communication from Turkey. And in fact, official statements from Turkey say that the deal is still intact. That is, the borders are still closed. So on the EU side, they're saying that's the only information they can go on right now, what they're being officially told by the Turks. But if Turkey was to open the borders, it would be a violation of that agreement and they would no longer receive that EU funding. It would throw the EU into some very, very emergency plans having to be put into place in Bulgaria, in Greece, those countries that border Turkey. And there's real questions about whether or not they're prepared for that. Frontex, the EU border force, it can be mobilized, but it takes some time. And of course, this is happening while the coronavirus crisis is happening. It's really the last thing that EU officials want to be dealing with right now.
Okay, and do you get the impression from what was happening at another forum there in Brussels, the NATO emergency meeting of ambassadors, that, you know, people are really genuinely concerned that we've got a sort of an open war situation brewing between Russia and NATO ally Turkey?
Yeah, an EU spokesman talked about what's happening there just now in very, very stark terms, about being very concerned about the humanitarian situation. And just up the road at NATO headquarters here in Brussels, they were having at the same time an emergency meeting. Now, that emergency meeting was called under Article 4 of the NATO treaty. That means any member state can call such an emergency meeting. They're pretty rare. And so this is can be called definitely an emergency situation, but they're very tense talks, we can imagine, this morning, because Turkey, to put it mildly, is not the most liked member of NATO these days. And a lot of people have been expressing concern about Turkey's invasion of the northern border of Syria. And NATO members have been asking, what will we do if Turkey invokes Article 5, that's the mutual defense clause, in the name of that war in Syria? France, in particular, President Emmanuel Macron has been saying, look, NATO needs to have a response ready if Turkey comes with that Article 5 request. EU members, European countries do not want to get dragged into a war of Turkey's making. There is very little trust between European countries and Ankara at the moment, and it's very, very tense in terms of Turkey wanting to make that request. It is a NATO member, not exactly in good favor at the moment. So for now, it seems people were encouraged by the readout of that call between Erdogan and Russian President Vladimir Putin, and people are just hoping hoping for a de-escalation, because really this is the last thing that European officials need to be dealing with right now.
Okay, Dave Keating in Brussels. Thank you very much indeed for that update.